They whispered behind her back, called her tremors, said she'd never make it through a single shift. The attending physicians rolled their eyes when she fumbled with the IV cart. Security laughed when her hands shook signing paperwork. Nobody knew. Nobody could know. Then the motorcade screeched into the ER bay. Gunshots, blood, chaos. "Ambassador down, GSW to the chest, he's coding." The lead surgeon froze. The head nurse backed away. That's when her hands stopped shaking. "Everyone out, now!" What happened in the next 4 minutes would expose a secret she'd hidden for 3 years and turn 6 federal agents into an impenetrable wall of protection around the one person who could save their principal's life. The nurse they mocked? She was never just a nurse. The ER doors exploded inward. 6 agents poured through, weapons drawn, eyes scanning, tactical formation perfect, blood everywhere. The ambassador's body moved on a gurney between them. His chest was a mess of crimson, his face gray, dying. The lead agent barked orders, stone-faced, military precision. The attending physician froze. Dr. Peterson, 20 years of experience. His hands trembled as he stared at the wound, at the security detail, at the cameras already rolling. This wasn't medicine anymore. This was politics. He stammered something about protocols, about waiting for the chief of surgery, about liability. Nobody moved. The ambassador's monitor screamed, vitals dropping. That's when she stepped forward. The floor nurse they called tremors behind her back, the one who fumbled IV lines, who spilled medication cups, whose hands shook so badly she couldn't hold a pen steady. Her voice cut through the chaos like a gunshot. "Everyone out." Dr. Peterson blinked. "What?" I said out. "Now." Her hands weren't shaking anymore. The transformation happened in seconds. One moment she was the quiet nurse who kept her head down. The next, she was someone else entirely. Her shoulders squared, her stance widened, her eyes locked onto the ambassador with absolute focus. One of the agents stepped forward, older, decorated. His gaze dropped to her wrist, a faded tattoo, numbers and symbols, military insignia mostly hidden by her sleeve. His eyes widened. "Lieutenant?" She didn't acknowledge him. Her hands moved to the ambassador's chest, precise, calculated, no hesitation. Contact shot, 9 millimeters, penetrated left chest wall, subclavian artery compromised. Her voice was different now, clipped, authoritative, command voice. Dr. Peterson found his courage. "You can't just... You're not authorized to..." She cut him off without looking up. "Massive transfusion protocol. O-negative blood. 6 units. Move." A nurse ran. Dr. Peterson sputtered. "I'm the attending physician here, and I..." Time of incision. 14:47. The scalpel appeared in her hand. Nobody saw where she got it. 1 second her hands were empty. The next, the blade was moving. Clean incision, perfect angle, impossibly confident. Dr. Peterson's mouth opened. No sound came out. The decorated agent spoke into his comm. "Command, we have a situation." The nurse, her technique. "That's combat trauma protocol." He stepped closer. "Where did you serve?" She didn't answer. Her hands worked, fast, efficient, every movement purposeful. The other nurses stood frozen, watching someone they thought they knew become a stranger. Her fingers found the bleeding vessel, applied pressure, exact amount, perfect position. "I need a Richardson retractor, curved Mayo scissors. And get me someone who can hold pressure here, like we're holding a breech." The last phrase made the decorated agent's head snap up. Field terminology, combat medicine. A younger nurse moved forward, hands shaking. She positioned herself where instructed. "Just like that. Don't move. Don't breathe heavy. Just hold." The nurse nodded, terrified but focused. The ambassador's monitor continued its alarm, but the pitch was changing, vitals stabilizing, incrementally. She worked in silence now. Her hands moved with muscle memory that couldn't be faked. This wasn't something learned in a civilian hospital. This was battlefield surgery, intercostal incision, clean, no wasted movement. Her fingers compressed the damaged artery, found the tear, assessed the damage in seconds, suture, 4-neuroproline, now. A nurse handed it over, hands trembling. She threaded it without looking. Her eyes never left the wound. The room held its breath. Stitch, pull, tie, perfect tension, again, again. The monitor's alarm softened, then quieted. Vitals climbing, heart rate strengthening, blood pressure rising from critical. 4 minutes, that's all it took. She placed the final suture, checked her work, nodded once, then stepped back. Her hands began to shake. The tremor started in her fingers, spread to her wrists, her whole arms quivering now like she'd been holding a jackhammer. She stared at her hands, at the blood coating them, at the steadiness that had vanished the moment the crisis ended. The room was silent, just the steady beep of the heart monitor. Strong, regular, alive. Dr. Peterson stared, his face pale, his expensive education suddenly feeling inadequate. The decorated agent moved closer, his weapon holstered now, his posture different, protective. He spoke into his radio. Principal is stable, threat assessment level elevated. The nurse stays in protective custody until we understand what just happened. The other 5 agents shifted, formed a perimeter around her, not restraining, not arresting, protecting. She stood in the center, blood-soaked scrubs, shaking hands, exhausted eyes. The ambassador breathed steadily on the gurney, color returning to his face, alive because of her. Dr. Peterson finally found his voice. "Who are you?" She didn't answer, just stared at her trembling hands. The decorated agent positioned himself at her shoulder. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions." She nodded, mute. The lead agent appeared, younger, clean-cut, federal written all over him. He looked at the ambassador, at the surgical site, at her. "Somebody want to explain what just happened?" The decorated agent cleared his throat. "The nurse. She just performed a thoracotomy in the ER. No authorization, no backup. 4 minutes from incision to stable vitals." The lead agent's expression didn't change. And that's not civilian medicine. That's forward operating base protocol, combat surgery. All eyes turned to her. She stood silent, trapped inside the ring of federal protection, her hands shaking violently now. Dr. Peterson stepped forward. "I don't understand. You're a floor nurse. Basic intake. You couldn't even start an IV without—" He stopped, understanding dawning, the shaking. It wasn't incompetence. It was something else entirely. The lead agent made a decision. Secure the room, nobody in or out, and get me her personnel file, all of it. 2 agents moved to the doors. The decorated agent stayed at her shoulder. "Lieutenant, we need to talk." She finally looked at him, her eyes hollow, haunted. "I'm not a lieutenant anymore." Her voice barely a whisper. The ambassador's monitor beeped steadily. Proof of impossible skill, evidence of a secret she'd hidden for years. Dr. Peterson backed away slowly, processing, recalculating everything he thought he knew. The nurses whispered, shock and awe mixing in equal measure, and she stood in the center of it all, surrounded by agents who'd formed an impenetrable wall, protected and trapped simultaneously. Her hands shook, her secret was out, and everything was about to change. The lead agent spoke into his comm. "We need a secure location for debrief, and somebody find out who this woman really is." The decorated agent already knew. He'd seen those moves before, in Kandahar, in Mosul, in places without names. He'd seen surgeons work miracles under fire. He'd never seen one hiding in a civilian ER, pretending to be less than they were. Until now. The ambassador breathed, stable, saved, and the nurse who saved. Him stood trembling in a ring of federal agents, waiting for the questions she couldn't answer, the ones she'd been running from for years, the doors sealed, the room locked down, and the truth prepared to surface, whether she was ready or not. The private room felt smaller than it was. Not an interrogation room, not officially, just a conference space on the 3rd floor, bland walls, generic furniture, a table between them. But the lead agent's eyes missed nothing. He sat across from her, hands folded, expression neutral, professional. The decorated agent stood by the door, silent witness. Those weren't nurse hands. The lead agent's voice was calm, stating facts. That was combat surgical technique. Level 1, trauma. Forward operating base protocol. She said nothing. Her hands rested on the table, still trembling. He waited. She'd learned this tactic overseas, the silence that demands filling, the patience that breaks resistance. Finally she spoke. "Lieutenant Commander. Army nurse. Corpse." The words felt strange, like claiming someone else's identity. 3 tours, Kandahar, Mosul, other places, places without names on any map. The agent leaned back slightly, his posture shifting, less interrogator, more listener. I ran a CSH, Combat Support Hospital. Her voice was flat, reciting facts. We got the worst cases, the ones who wouldn't survive transport to Germany, the ones who needed surgery immediately or they'd die. How many? She looked up, met his eyes. How many what? Surgeries, lives saved. She laughed. No humor in it. I stopped counting after 200. The decorated agent by the door shifted his weight, recognition in his movement. The lead agent nodded. So what happened? Everything. Nothing. She closed her eyes. 18 months ago, mass casualty event, rocket attack on a convoy. 37 wounded arrived in 6 hours. Her hands clenched on the table, the tremor worsening. I operated on 14 patients myself, saved 13, the numbers came. Automatically. Burned into memory. 13 survivors, 1 loss. The agent waited. He was 19 years old, private, fresh deployment, 3 weeks in country. Her voice cracked. Shrapnel wounds, chest and abdomen. I stabilized him, got the bleeding controlled. His vitals were holding. She opened her eyes, stared at her shaking hands. Then the next patient arrived. Worse injuries, command priority. Save the most salvageable first, standard protocol, the math of battlefield medicine. So I moved to the next table, started operating. The room was silent except for her breathing. He coded, 3 feet away from me. I was elbow deep in someone else's chest cavity. Couldn't get to him. A tear tracked down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. He died calling for his mother. I heard him. Every word. And I couldn't stop. Couldn't go to him. Had to finish the patient in front of me. The decorated agent looked away. The lead agent's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. By the time I got back to him, he was gone. 20 minutes. That's all it took. She wiped her face roughly. I saved the other patient. He lived. Went home to his family. But the private died alone. Medical discharge, PTSD. The tremors started after. She held up her shaking hands, my body rebelling against the muscle memory that failed when it mattered most. The agent leaned forward. You didn't fail. You made the right call. Command priority saved. I know the doctrine. Her voice sharp now. I wrote some of it, taught it, believed in it. She stood abruptly, paced to the window. But knowing the right decision doesn't make it feel right, doesn't stop you from seeing his face every time you close your eyes. The tremors were violent now, whole arms shaking. I couldn't hold a scalpel without seeing him. So I stopped. Took a civilian nursing position, basic intake, routine work, no life or death decisions. She turned back to them. I rebuilt myself as someone lesser, someone safe. The shaking, it was my body trying to forget what my hands knew how to do. The lead agent absorbed this, processing. But today your hands remembered. Yes. Why? She laughed bitterly. Because there was no choice, no time to think, just react. The door burst open. A hospital administrator, red-faced, breathing hard. Behind him a Secret Service supervisor, senior grade, grim expression. We have a problem. The lead agent stood. What problem? The supervisor stepped forward. The ambassador wasn't the target. He was bait. Everyone froze. The supervisor continued. Security footage shows the shooting was coordinated, planned. The shooter positioned himself to wound, not kill. Drew our response. Got us to bring the ambassador here specifically. Here? Why here? Because of who else is here. The supervisor pulled out a tablet, showed surveillance images. Foreign dignitary. Arrived this morning for routine cardiac surgery, scheduled for OR3 in 2 hours. The lead agent's face hardened. Target? We believe so, and there's more. The supervisor swiped through images. Your 3 best cardiac surgeons, all called away in the last hour. Emergencies, family crises, car accidents. The administrator spoke up, his voice shaking. None of them real. We just confirmed. The calls were spoofed, the emergencies fabricated. Someone is systematically removing our surgical capacity. The room went cold. The supervisor looked directly at her. We need you to scrub in. You're the only one who can perform the surgery. No. Her hands shook violently. I can't. I told you, I'm not that person anymore. The decorated agent finally spoke, his voice quiet. Ma'am, the ambassador you saved, he has a daughter, 8 years old. She gets to see her father tonight because of you. He pulled a photograph from his pocket, slid it across the table. A family, 3 children, smiling, young. This dignitary has 3 children. His country is a crucial ally. If he dies on American soil, we're looking at an international incident that could destabilize an entire region. She stared at the photo, saw the private's face instead, young, terrified, dying. I can't save everyone. The decorated agent met her eyes. No, but you can save him. She stood, walked to the window. The tremors consumed her now, whole arms quaking. In the glass reflection she saw herself in uniform, saw the surgeon she used to be, confident, capable, unshakable, a ghost staring back. If I do this, if I go back into an OR. She didn't finish the sentence. The lead agent stood beside her, his voice firm. Then we make sure you're protected. All 6 of us, whatever you need. She closed her eyes, felt the weight of it, the choice, the risk, the private's face, the ambassador's daughter, the 3 children in the photograph, all the lives that hung in balance. She opened her eyes, made the decision, get me his medical files. I need 20 minutes to prep. Her hands were still shaking, but she moved toward the door. The 6 agents fell into formation around her, automatic, protective. They walked down the hospital corridor. Staff parted, staring, confused. The floor nurse who couldn't start an IV now flanked by federal agents like a dignitary. Her hands trembled, visible to everyone. But her steps were steady. She passed the nurse's station, past Dr. Peterson, who stood frozen in shock, past the ER where she'd saved the ambassador an hour before, toward the surgical wing, toward the operating room, toward the person she'd spent 18 months trying to forget. The tremors worsened with every step, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. 3 children needed their father, and she was the only one who could make that happen. The OR doors loomed ahead. The 6 agents maintained formation. Her hands shook, but she pushed through the doors anyway, into the place she swore she'd never return, the place where lives were saved or lost on the edge of a scalpel, where muscle memory mattered more than fear, where the surgeon she used to be was waiting. Whether she was ready or not, the scrub room was sterile, cold, familiar. She stood at the sink, water running, soap dispensing automatically. The ritual began. Hands, wrists, forearms. The pattern burned into muscle memory. 10 years of practice, thousands of repetitions. Her tremors eased slightly. Fractional, but noticeable. The OR team watched through the glass. Their faces said everything. She's just a floor nurse. She can't even start an IV. What is she doing here? The supervisor had pulled rank. Federal authority overriding hospital protocol. They obeyed because they had no choice. But they didn't believe. Not yet. She dried her hands, gowned, gloved, each movement precise. The OR doors opened. The dignitary lay prepped on the table, draped, sterile field perfect. Routine cardiac procedure. Should be straightforward. The anesthesiologist nodded. Ready when you are. She moved to the imaging screen, studied the scans, CT, MRI, angiogram. Her eyes tracked the vasculature, the proposed surgical approach. Something wrong? She leaned closer, traced a vessel with her gloved finger on the screen. These films. They're altered. What? The anesthesiologist stepped closer. She pointed. This vessel, the left anterior descending. The angle is wrong. The diameter doesn't match the patient's body mass. The scrub nurse looked confused. But these came from radiology this morning. They're falsified. Someone manipulated the imaging. That's impossible. Her voice hardened. Look at the subclavian branch. It's anatomically inconsistent. And here, the aortic arch. The curvature is off. She turned to the agents outside the OR window. I need new imaging, real time, right now. The lead agent spoke into his comm. Secure radiology. Emergency scan authorization. The anesthesiologist protested. We can't delay. The procedure window. If anyone follows these plans, he dies on the table. Her voice cut through objections. The false imaging shows a straightforward repair. But there's a congenital defect these scans don't show. I'd cut directly into it. How do you know? Because I've seen this before. Combat zones. Insurgents would swap imaging to cause surgical deaths, untraceable, blamed on doctor error. The room went cold. 15 minutes later, new scans arrived. She pulled them up, her hands steady on the controls. There, an aortic aneurysm, large, directly in the planned surgical path. If anyone had followed these plans, he would have bled out in seconds. Surgical accident. No way to prove otherwise. The anesthesiologist's face paled. This isn't just assassination, it's sophisticated. Medical knowledge, inside access. The anesthesiologist checked his watch. Nervous. Too nervous. We need to proceed. The ambassador's condition requires immediate. She turned slowly, looked at him directly. Remove him from my OR. Excuse me? You heard me? Out. The agents moved instantly, 2 of them flanking the anesthesiologist. You can't just get me the nurse anesthetist from the ER. Someone I can trust. The anesthesiologist was escorted out, protesting, voice fading down the corridor. New anesthetist arrived, young, competent, calm. Ready? She nodded. 16:35, time of incision. Her hands didn't shake. The moment she committed, the tremors vanished, like someone flipped a switch. The scalpel moved. Clean line, perfect depth, muscle memory taking over. The OR team watched in silence. This wasn't a floor nurse fumbling through basics. This was elite surgical skill. 16:42. She identified the aneurysm, traced its borders, called out measurements, 7 centimeters, fusiform, extending from the aortic arch, thin-walled, high rupture risk. Her hands moved with absolute certainty. The surgical assistant adjusted position without being asked, reading her movements. Retractor. It appeared in her hand. The OR became a combat surgical unit. No wasted words, no hesitation. 16:58. The critical moment. The vessel wall began to tear, blood welled, pressure dropping. Everyone froze. She didn't. Clamp. Suture. Now. Her voice was steel. Time seemed to slow. Each movement stretched, hyper-focused. Her hands moved with impossible precision. She wasn't in a civilian hospital anymore. She was back in Kandahar, tent walls shaking from nearby explosions, dust coating everything, blood everywhere, saving lives under fire. The OR staff became her combat team. They responded to her authority without question, trust, built in seconds through competence, suture placed, vessel clamped, bleeding controlled, time resumed normal speed. Outside the OR, the lead agent received a transmission. His expression darkened. He spoke into his comm. The other surgeons, the emergencies that called them away, all fabricated, coordinated. Someone in the diplomatic security team was compromised. The insider was still in the building. Locked down the OR. Nobody in or out until she's done. The agents formed a barrier at the doors. Inside she worked, focused, absolute. Then the lights flickered. Backup power failing. The monitoring equipment wavered, screens dimming, deliberate. Someone was trying to disrupt the surgery. Keep working. Her voice calm. I've operated by flashlight in worse conditions. Keep that overhead surgical lamp stable and I can finish. The emergency generators kicked in, partial power restored. But the equipment remained unstable. Monitors flickering, vital signs intermittent. She didn't stop, didn't hesitate. Her hands continued their work, feeling more than seeing. Muscle memory and experience compensating for failed technology. The most delicate part of the procedure, repairing the aneurysm wall, reinforcing the weakened vessel, equipment failing around her, agents guarding the door, someone in the hospital wanting her patient dead. Her hands didn't shake, not once. Internal monologue consumed her thoughts. She wasn't saving the dignitary, she was saving the private, the 19-year-old who died calling for his mother. Every suture was apology. Every perfect movement was redemption. This time I don't walk away. This time I finish. This time everyone lives. Her vision tunneled. Nothing existed except the surgical field, the damaged vessel, the needle and thread. Stitch, pull, tie, perfect tension. Again, again. The world reduced to millimeters of tissue, precision measured in fractions. 17:47, final suture placed. She stepped back, examined her work. Perfect repair. The monitors stabilized, vital strong, Heart rhythm steady, the patient would live. She pulled off her mask. Tears streamed down her face. The OR staff erupted in applause, relieved, amazed. She didn't acknowledge it, just stripped her gloves, walked to scrub out, exhausted, empty, redeemed. The OR doors opened. The lead agent stood waiting, his weapon drawn, not aimed at her, aimed beside her, protective. We found the insider, hospital administrator. He ran when we started asking questions. Her hands found the sink, started washing, automatic, he in. Custody? Yes, but he wasn't working alone. She looked up, met his eyes in the mirror. There's someone else, someone who knew exactly which surgeries to sabotage, which staff to remove, how to manipulate the imaging. He paused, his expression serious. Someone who knew you'd be the only one left who could save him. She froze, water running over her hands. What are you saying? Someone wanted you in that OR, this whole thing, the ambassador, the shooting, the sabotaged surgeries. He stepped closer. I think you were always the target. Her reflection stared back, shocked, horrified. The pieces fell into place, the convenient timing, the systematic removal of surgical capacity, the altered imaging only she would catch. Someone studied her, knew her background, her skills, her trauma, orchestrated everything to force her back into surgery. But why? The lead agent's radio crackled, more agents responding, alarms blaring in the distance. The 6 agents formed a perimeter around her again, protecting. She stood in the surgical wing corridor, scrubs soaked with sweat, hands clean but trembling again, the dysentery alive behind her, the ambassador recovering floors above. 2 impossible saves, and the horrifying realization settling over her like ice water. She wasn't the unexpected hero. She was the objective. Someone wanted her exposed, wanted her skills proven, wanted her identity revealed. But why? The alarms grew louder. The agents tightened formation. And somewhere in the hospital, the real threat was still moving, still planning, still one step ahead. The secure conference room held too many people. Federal officials lined one wall, hospital leadership the other, armed agents at the door, and her in the center, still wearing surgical scrubs, still exhausted, still processing. The lead agent stood at the head of the table, a tablet in his hands, evidence compiled, the conspiracy unraveled in pieces. A rival nation wanted to destabilize diplomatic relations, standards, espionage. Expected. But they wanted something else. Proof that American combat medical personnel could be compromised, manipulated, made vulnerable. He swiped through documents, surveillance photos, communications intercepts. You were identified months ago. Former elite surgeon, now broken, working a low-level position in a civilian hospital. She stared at her photo on the screen, taken without her knowledge, annotated in a foreign language. They studied you, your PTSD, your tremors, your case file from the medical discharge. He pulled up more images, her daily routine, her commute, her isolation. They orchestrated everything to force you back into surgery under duress, to record your breakdown, your failure. The room was silent. They wanted footage of an American military surgeon collapsing under pressure. Propaganda value, proof of weakness. He looked at her directly. But you didn't fail. You performed flawlessly, under sabotage, under pressure, under impossible conditions. He smiled slightly. Cold satisfaction. You ruined their entire operation by being better than they calculated. She absorbed this, the weight of it. Someone spent months planning her destruction, and she survived anyway. The door opened. The chief of surgery entered. Dr. Kaplan, silver hair, expensive suit, authority in every movement. The same man who accepted her demotion to floor nurse without question, who watched her struggle with basic tasks, who never asked why an experienced trauma surgeon was doing intake work. He sat across from her, his expression unguarded, genuine remorse. I owe you an apology. She said nothing. When you came here, you told me you couldn't operate anymore. I believed you. I should have seen. Should have recognized. He paused, struggled with the words. An elite surgeon doesn't just lose skill. Trauma doesn't erase training. I should have offered support, resources. Instead, I let you hide. She spoke quietly. I needed to believe it too. The silence stretched. The hospital's chief administrator entered next. Not the conspirator now in federal custody. The actual administrator. A woman in her 50s. Competent, professional, she didn't sit. We failed you. When you needed support, we gave you a lesser position and called it kindness. Her voice was steady but tight. We took an exceptional surgeon and turned her into a floor nurse, told ourselves we were helping. We were just making it easier to ignore the problem. She looked at the woman. Said nothing. The wounds were too fresh. The door opened again. The dignitary entered. Recovered, stable, alert, his color healthy, his movements strong. He bowed deeply. A formal gesture. Cultural significance. In my culture, a life debt is sacred. You saved me, knowing someone wanted me dead, knowing you were in danger. He produced a small box, ornate, official, my country's highest civilian honor. Please accept. She shook her head. I was just doing my job, the lead agent interjected. No, you did everyone's job. You did the impossible. The dignitary set the box on the table anyway. If you will not accept now, perhaps someday you will. He bowed again, withdrew. Dr. Kaplan leaned forward. We want to offer you Chief of Trauma Surgery. Full reinstatement to surgical privileges, your choice of team, your choice of protocols. Before she could respond, another voice spoke from the doorway. A military officer, full dress uniform, medals and ribbons, high rank. Your commission can be reactivated. We need surgeons like you training the next generation, a State Department official beside him added. We would like you to consult on our medical security protocols. Your expertise is invaluable. Everyone wanted a piece of the hero. She looked at each offer, each path back to what she was. Then she stood. I'm not the surgeon I was before. That person died in Kandahar. Silence descended. But I'm not the person who walked into this hospital yesterday either. She met Dr. Kaplan's eyes. I'll take the trauma. Position. On one condition. Name it. I want to build a program for military medical personnel transitioning to civilian life. Her voice strengthened. Conviction building, the ones like me, who left parts of themselves overseas. She looked around the room. Combat surgeons, medics, corpsmen. They come back trained to save lives under fire. Then they're told they're overqualified, too intense, not a good fit for civilian medicine. Her hands clenched. They end up underemployed, underutilized, drowning in trauma, their skills wasted because nobody knows how to integrate them. She stepped forward. I want to create a fast-track program, pair them with trauma centers, give them the support I didn't have, let them use their skills instead of suppressing them. The lead agent smiled slightly. I think that can be arranged. Dr. Kaplan nodded immediately. Approved. Whatever you need. The military officer extended his hand. We'll provide full support. Personnel files, referrals, funding. She shook. It. Firmly. The meeting concluded. Officials filing out. Plans forming. She remained, exhausted but certain. This was the path forward, not back to who she was, forward to who she could become. 6 months later, the hospital's new combat medical transition program was operational. 12 former military medical personnel now practicing, trauma surgeons, ER nurses, flight medics. She ran the program personally, hands-on, invested. Her tremors were gone, not because the PTSD disappeared. It hadn't, probably never would, but because she was using her training purposefully, not fighting it, not suppressing it, channeling it. She taught a class, former combat medics, teaching them civilian protocols without erasing their combat training. Your instincts are right. Trust them. We just need to adapt the application. She operated alongside former military surgeons, their movements synchronized, combat efficiency in civilian setting, a photo wall in her office, program graduates in their new positions, smiling, purposeful, alive, and on her desk, one photo separate from the others, the 19-year-old private, never forgotten. Finally at peace with his memory, a knock on her office door. Come in. The ambassador entered, his daughter beside him, 8 years old, bright eyes, holding a drawing. She wanted to give you this. The drawing showed a stick figure nurse, cape flowing behind, my hero written in crayon across the top. She knelt to the child's level. Your daddy's very brave. The girl shook her head. Serious expression. You're brave. Daddy told me. The ambassador smiled, placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder. She talks about you constantly. The nurse who saved Daddy. Her phone buzzed. Emergency page, mass casualty incident incoming. She stood immediately. No hesitation, no freeze. I have to go. The ambassador nodded. Understanding, we understand. She moved quickly, down the corridor, toward the trauma bay. 2 agents fell into step beside her, familiar faces. 2 of the original 6. They'd been permanently assigned to hospital security, specifically to protect her. Another day at the office, Lieutenant? She smiled slightly. Something like that. The trauma bay doors opened. Crisis unfolding. Multiple casualties. Her team already moving. Former combat medical personnel all. They moved with practiced precision. No panic, no chaos. Just efficient life-saving action. She scrubbed quickly, gowned, gloved. Her hands were steady, absolutely steady. She entered the fray, calling orders, directing flow, saving lives, exactly where she belonged. They mocked the shaking hands. They didn't understand. Those hands weren't broken. They were just waiting for permission to save lives again. And now they had it. Every day, every patient, every life. Permission granted, mission accepted, purpose found. The tremors were gone. But the skills remained. Stronger than ever. She worked through the crisis, patient after patient, life after life, her team moving. Like the combat unit they once were. Saving everyone. This time, everyone. The monitors beeped steadily, vitals stabilizing, patients surviving. She stepped back, surveyed the trauma bay, order from chaos, life from death, exactly what she was trained to do, exactly who she was meant to be. Not the broken floor nurse, not the traumatized veteran, the surgeon, the leader, the teacher, the person who turned pain into purpose, who transformed trauma into training, who saved lives because she understood the cost of losing them. Her hands were steady, her purpose clear, her mission ongoing, one patient at a time, one life at a time, one victory at a time. They mocked her once, nobody mocked her now. They saw the truth, finally. The warrior who never stopped fighting. She just changed battlefields. And now she was winning, every single day.